Hello, Sienna, and everyone else who's watching this later on. It is Thursday, September 24th, and I'm going to talk today about personal statements and cover letters. And one thing that I'll say right out at the top is most of the examples that I'm going to use throughout are going to refer to writing personal statements. And personal statements would be the document that you would write if you were applying to a graduate program. But all that I'm saying will also apply or does also apply to the writing of cover letters. And so if the connection isn't obvious with what I'm saying about personal statements to cover letters, that I'll do my best to address that. But, if you have a question, if you want to, Sienna, you're the only one right now who's able to sort of chime in. Feel free to chime in. Then I have some questions at the tail end that people have emailed to me that I'll address that talk more specifically or will talk more specifically about cover letters, right? I'm not sure who this is. Oh, it's Sam. Hi, Sam. So we just started, Sam, so feel free to, I was just saying that we're going to be talking about personal statements throughout, but if you have questions about cover letters specifically, I'm happy to field those. So, all right. So moving on, the way that I talk about most pieces of writing and how it is that somebody ought to work through figuring out how to write that piece of writing is using sort of this diagram that's up on your screen right now. And basically the purpose of this, hi Jay, the purpose of this, of the diagram is to figure out how to write a particular genre. And so I use this for any type of writing, and I'm going to use it specifically for talking about how to write a personal statement in a cover letter. And it's sort of, the way that I like to describe it, it's a process, a diagram that I use to sort of go through the process of figuring out all of the different aspects that you should be paying attention to whenever you sit down to write something. In this case, a personal statement or a cover letter. So this diagram I'm going to show you right at the top, and I'm going to come back to it again as we work through the slide deck here. But notice that what we're working towards is a better understanding of how to produce a genre, in this case, how to produce a personal statement or a cover letter. All right. So we're going to focus on the audience of a personal statement or a cover letter. And I just, want to give you some information about, you can probably imagine in the back of your heads, like who are the real people that are really going to be reading this personal statement? Why are they going to be reading it? What are their goals? What are your goals, et cetera, et cetera. But let's start out just talking about the audience. So the audience obviously is going to be an admissions or a hiring committee. So it's going to be people who are working at the school where you're applying to go to graduate school or working at the business that you're applying to for a job. In other words, they're people who have committed a huge chunk of their life to that particular program or to that particular school or to that particular business. They have a lot invested in it, right? And the business has a lot invested in them. So they're representatives of the company. Sometimes there are jobs out there which will use sort of an outside hiring firm. But I don't know that, I think that oftentimes companies that do that, large companies that do that, part of the obligation of that outside firm is to become versed in the company. And so much of what I will say will still apply, even if it's a larger firm or a larger company. The important thing to note here, though, is that whoever is going to end up reading your personal statement or your cover letter, they don't know you at all, right? They don't know you and they don't know how you fit. And I think that that's important to recognize even at an institution like Bridgewater, where you might be a current student applying for a graduate program at Bridgewater, and you might know some of the people who teach in that program. Oftentimes those hiring committees or those admissions committees are still made up of people that don't know you at all, right? And more importantly, nobody, it doesn't matter how close they know you, how well they know you, nobody knows exactly how it is that you think you're going to fit into that program or into that place of employment, all right? So that's the rough picture of the audience of a cover letter and a personal statement that you need to be aware of. It's somebody who works for the company or works for the program, and it's somebody who doesn't know exactly how you fit with that program or that company. And understanding that audience becomes really important as we sort of work through the other elements of that genre diagram I showed you at the top. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is the goal. The goal is the objective that you are trying to achieve, but also the objective that the audience is trying to achieve. In other words, you want something, and the people that you're writing to, the admissions committee, the hiring committee, they also want that thing. And so what is it, right? it's not just a job, because the people who already work at the company, obviously they already have a job. So what is the thing that they're wanting? Well, you want a position where you can contribute to that program and company, and they want somebody to fill that position where they can contribute to the company. In other words, they don't want to hire anybody. They don't want to admit anybody. They want to admit somebody who, as soon as they come and join that program or join that job, is going to contribute to that program or that job. It's going to help that program succeed. It's going to help that job, that company thrive. Okay. So it's very different than applying to college. I think oftentimes applying to college is a buyer's market, right? You apply to multiple colleges at the same time, and you sort of pick and choose the best one of the 5 or 6 that you get into. Applying for a job is very different, right? You're going to apply for as many, if not more jobs, but it's less about whether or not you get to pick. You're not, probably not going to get multiple job offers. Maybe you will, hopefully you will. But it's more an issue of the job or the company picking you. So you need to tell them why they should pick you. And that's, again, sort of your objective. Your goal here is not just to get a job or to get an admissions into a graduate program. Your objective is to contribute to that program. It's to help that program or that job get better, right? You probably hear my kids, they're playing loud hide and seek again, Sienna. See, I told you, as soon as I started talking, my kids would start playing hide and seek. I don't know why they think that playing hide and seek at full volume is a good idea. Everyone can find you, sons. You're running around wildly. Anyway, all right, moving on. I want to talk now about the subject of the personal statement, all right? So the subject is a little bit tricky, right? This, obviously, you have a relationship with the subject, but so too does the audience have a relationship with the subject, okay? So the subject, first and foremost, from your perspective, is going to be, what are my skills and experiences and knowledges? But the subject is also going to be, on the perspective of the people that you're writing to, the specific position in the program or company that you're applying to, right? So the subject of your cover letter, the subject of your personal statement, it can't just be you talking about yourself. It has to be you talking about yourself and how you fit into that company or that position or that school or that program, right? So it's got 2 aspects to the subject. I think everybody's comfortable with the idea that a personal statement or a cover letter is about themselves, but it's not just about yourself. It's also about the position or the company or the program that you are applying to get admitted into. Okay, that's an important point to keep in mind. It's moving forward. Now let's talk about the form and the content. That is to say, what is the thing that goes into this personal statement or this cover letter? All right. So basically, a personal statement is an argument, okay? And because it's an argument, it's got 2 important components, and these two components make up the bulk of what your personal statement or your cover letter ends up being. One, it's got the conclusion. By conclusion, I mean it's got the claim that you're making, and we'll talk specifically about what that claim is in a moment. But anytime that you're making a claim and you're trying to make a good argument, you also need to offer up reasons that support that claim, that support that conclusion. Reasons are things that, if they are true, the conclusion must be true. So what is the conclusion and what are the reasons? Well, keep in mind all that we've talked about so far. The conclusion is, or the claim that your personal statement and your cover letter needs to make, is some variation of this statement that I've bolded here at the top. The claim is, my success in the position that I'm applying to is going to contribute to the mission of the program or the company that I'm applying to. In other words, if I'm writing a cover letter or a personal statement to, work at, I don't know, I'm trying to get admitted into Bridgewater College's master's programs, right? I have to somehow articulate in that personal statement, my success, if you were to admit me into that program, will contribute to that program's success as well, right? One hand washes the other. Notice that this claim is different than just saying I'm a qualified or strong or even the best candidate, right? It's also different than saying your position or your job or your program will help me grow and develop. It's also different than saying, I really like your program or company and I've always wanted to be a part of it, right? These are not strong claims to make in a personal statement because they're very me-centric. They're very solipsistic, right? Who cares if you're a qualified or strong or even a best candidate? There are going to be dozens of other qualified, strong, and best candidates out there applying for that particular job. You got to tell the company why your success and your qualities and your strengths will become their strengths and their qualities and their improvements, right? Who cares that the job is going to help you grow and develop? Of course, it's going to help you grow and develop. All jobs do that. All graduate programs do that. But how will the job benefit from your development? How will the job benefit from your growth, right? Similarly, you may like the program or the company that you want to apply to. That's awesome. But what does that do for the program that you like them, right? It doesn't do much. Again, it needs to be framed in this. If you help me, I help you. And when you help me, I help you. That's sort of the framing of the claim. So how do you support that claim? Well, you need to make your reasons prove these things. One, I can succeed, right? That is to say, you need to be able to point out that you have had success in the past, right? You've been successful in an internship. You've been successful in a job. You've been successful in your coursework. You've been successful in your research projects. You've had success, right? You also need to prove that you can contribute, right? That you're a team player, so to speak. You're not an island. You don't imagine yourself to be unique or distinct or I succeed by standing on my alone. No, because you're applying to become a part of a group. So you need also some experiences, some evidence that proves to the fact that you can contribute to a group. And you also need to be able to demonstrate that you understand the program or the company's mission. All right, this is important because, again, the subject of your cover letter, the subject of your personal statement isn't just your experiences. It is also the requirements of the position to which you are applying, the expectations of the position to which you are applying, right? So your claims, your subclaims in your personal statement need to, again, they say, I can succeed, I can contribute, and I understand the program or company's mission, all right? So you need to therefore talk about experiences, knowledges, skill sets. That's what we understand about a personal statement, is that we know that we need to write about what we've done and what we know and how we're good. But you need to select those experiences, those knowledges, those work experiences, research experiences, et cetera, that do the things that I just talked about. They prove your ability to succeed. They prove your ability to contribute. They prove that you understand the mission of the program. And that not just that you understand the mission, but also that what you do kind of aligns with the mission of the program already. You kind of want a letter reader to walk away from reading your cover letter or your personal statement thinking to themselves, why isn't this person already a part of our program? Why isn't this person already employed here? Because you want to basically say, like, look, I've been training for this position. Not I've been training for any position, but I've been training for this position. What this means, by the way, is if you do end up applying to multiple jobs, you probably will have to write multiple cover letters. Or if you apply to multiple graduate programs, you will probably have to write multiple personal statements when you're applying to those graduate programs. Doesn't mean that you're going to be lying to them, right? Because I think that you will be able to fit into multiple different experiences, multiple different positions, and multiple different programs or jobs. It just means, how do you curate and select the experiences from your past that fit into that company's trajectory or that position's trajectory or that program's trajectory, okay? So let's move on then to the context. This is an important one, something that is often forgotten. It would be great if it was just you, author, writing to one person audience, and they had all the time in the world to read over all of your words and to consider deeply the implications of your experiences and how those implications or how those experiences will contribute to their company, so on and so forth. But that's just not the context in which these documents will be read. In truth, the context is that whoever is going to end up reading your document is going to be reading dozens of these documents, if not hundreds of these documents. They're going to be looking over them and they're going to be reviewing them very quickly. The reason that this is important is because they're actually searching first for reasons to get rid of you and not reasons to keep you, right? So if they've got a stack of 100 documents in front of them, their first order of business isn't to find that one needle in the haystack. Their first order of business is to get rid of the haystack that's in the way of the needle, right? And so the things that will get in the way, the things that will prove to them that they need to eliminate an application very quickly are things that you already know about. Grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, mechanics mistakes. If you are clearly unqualified, like if you don't have the right degree or if you don't have the right experience, or, and this is a big one, if in articulating those experiences that you do have, you demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding of what their program or company is about, right? So a clear example of this would be like, if you were interested, if you were applying for a job in some sort of environmental agency that the mission of which was to advocate for environmental justice. And you had a lot of experience working in the fracking industry. And you talked about how you learned so much from the fracking industry that gave you might have accumulated from the fracking industry the right kind of experience. But if you talk about that in a cover letter to an environmental organization, they're probably going to think, what the hell is this Yahoo doing applying to this job? They have no business applying to this job because their values don't align with our values, right? So that's, I only put that up there because I think that's like the first thing that people are looking for to disqualify you is grammar, spelling, mechanics, and then your lack of qualifications. But then as they get a little bit deeper into it, they're then really looking for this misunderstanding of, do you understand what our program or what our company is really all about, right? All right, so now let's move on to the genre. So now we've talked about, again, and notice I haven't yet talked about the author or the purpose yet, but we've talked about the audience, we've talked about the goals, we've talked about the subject, we've talked about the context and the form and the content. Let's talk about the genre. What is a personal statement? What is a cover letter? Well, it's pretty easy. It's a business letter, right? So it's always going to have this sort of structure. Sometimes they won't say for you to write it as a business letter. Do it anyway. Sometimes they might not know. You might not have any indication. Write it as a business letter anyway. It's always going to be more acceptable for you to write a personal statement or a cover letter as a business letter than it will be for you to not write it as a business letter. You're always going to have more success that way than if you choose to try to write a unique one. So what I mean by that is basically just keep the structure, adhere to a business letter. Eventually, maybe you get further along in your career and you want to be a little bit creative with this, that's fine. I can't in good conscience advise you as undergraduates to send a personal statement or a cover letter to somebody that doesn't look like a business letter. I think that would be misleading you as undergraduates, right? And it would be a recipe for disaster. So what does that mean, a business letter? All right, so first and foremost, you got to start off with your name and permanent address. You should probably also include your email up here, right? So it's your name, street address, city and zip, and then email address. The date that you plan on sending the letter, right? The name of the recipient. If you don't know, if there's not like a named recipient, like you're not applying to, Bill Jaworski in the HR department, just put either the admissions committee or the hiring committee or the search committee right here where it says name of recipient. And then the title of the company or the program that you're applying to and the company's address, okay? Notice there's spaces. This is all single spaced lines. And then there's a full space in between your address and contact information, the date, and then another space between the date and name of the recipient. And then another space between the recipient's contact information and your salutation. In your salutation, right? So that is to say, how do you salute the people that you're addressing? I don't know why anyway, in your salutation, if you don't know who it is, again, you would say, dear hiring committee, dear, search committee, dear so-and-so. If you do know who it is, obviously address that direct person, dear Mr. Bill Jaworski, give them their title. If you're applying to a graduate program and there's a search chair or an admissions committee that is chaired by a faculty member, make sure you get the faculty member's title, right? So if they're if they have a PhD, they would be a doctor. If they don't have a PhD, they would probably be professor or instructor. But directly address that particular person in your salutation. Sorry, I don't know why this slide got screwy on me. Now let's move on to the business letter introduction. So this is after you've put the address, your address, their address, the salutation. You should have a short paragraph, if not just a single sentence where you say, I'm writing to apply for admission into blank at blank, or I'm writing to apply for this position at this company, right? Short, simple, keep it sweet. There are variations of this, but again, I don't feel comfortable. I think it would be sort of not a good recommendation on my part to recommend that you try to be creative in your introduction. Again, think about the context in which the person who's going to be reading this is reading it, right? They're going to be reading it quickly and they're going to be reading a lot of them. And sometimes they'll be doing double duty. So they're not just trying to hire for one position, they're probably trying to hire for multiple positions. So they need to know exactly what position you're applying to. So that's why you say, I'm writing to apply for the sales clerk position at Plato's Closet. I'm writing to apply for admission into the MA in Digital Media Strategy program at Bridgewater College, right? So name of the position or the program and the name of the school or the company needs to be in that introductory line, all right? Moving on, let's talk about additional information. This is where you make your case, right? So remember, the case that you're making, the claim that you're making is that my success in your program will lead to your program's further success. You don't want to necessarily say that explicitly, not just yet. You hold off on that. What you offer here are the most relevant bits of information about your experience that you think make that claim. That is to say, now is where you list and describe just 2 or 3, right? If you've not had a lot of experiences as an undergraduate, 2 is fine. If you have had a lot of impressive experiences, 3 is an operative number, right? So 3 is probably your goal for a cover letter or a personal statement. But this is where, again, you list and describe 3 impressive projects or work experiences that do the following things: prove your ability to succeed, prove your ability to contribute, prove that you understand the mission of the program or the company, and also align with the mission of the program or the company. And Sam, you have a question about this that we'll get at the tail end of things, but we'll hold off on that question for right now, right? So internships that you think directly prepare you to work in this particular field, or research experiences that you've had as an undergraduate that you think directly prepare you for graduate study at that particular program. You want to be able to describe those experiences in such a way that say, hey, look, I was successful. Good. It's a given. That's why I'm talking about it. It also shows that I was able to work with other people and contribute to, what other people's input was. It also shows that I understand your mission. I chose this particular experience to highlight because this experience demonstrates an understanding of what it is that you do in your company or at your graduate program. And not only that, it actually aligns with it, right? Again, you want them to read through your experiences and think to themselves, why doesn't this person already work here? Why doesn't this person already go to graduate school here? Okay. Yeah. All right. So where do you find out about the program's mission? Well, you got to visit their websites. You got to do research. So this is an argument, and the research that you need, the bits of information that you include in here that you need to have research on are your own experiences. That's cool. You already have access to that. It's firsthand experience, firsthand knowledge, but it's also the mission of the company or the program that you're applying to. So you get that by visiting their websites. Specifically as it relates to graduate schools, a graduate program, think of it like a nesting doll. A graduate program is one of many different types of programs that are offered by a department. And a department is one of many different departments that exist inside a division or a collection of departments. And a division is one of many different divisions that exist inside the larger college or the larger institution. Same thing applies for a job. If you're applying for a position in a particular branch of a company, that position is going to exist within that branch. That branch is going to have a relationship to other branches, and that, there's going to be a hierarchy or some type of structure that position is sort of situated in. And you need to make sense of how that position fits into that larger structure in terms of the institutional mission, right? So Bridgewater College's mission statement that you can find directly on their website, their values statement, that trickles down to the individual divisions in the college, and that trickles down to the individual departments in the college, and that trickles down to the individual graduate programs in the college, right? So here's if you were to apply to the MDMS program is part of the Comtech Culture Department, which is part of the Communication, Fine Arts, and Literature division, and that division is part of Bridgewater College. So how do you situate the mission in that sort of tiered system, right? Obviously, the people that you're applying to, and this goes for both cover letters and for graduate programs, so cover letters and personal statements, graduate programs and jobs, they're going to be most concerned with the first level, so with the program itself or with the position itself. But if they're a good hiring manager and you want to be hired at a company that has good hiring managers or good admissions policies, they're also going to have a big picture sense of how their program or how their position or how their division fits into the larger superstructure, right? And by the way, I will say, to those of you who are here, I'm happy to work with you as you try to develop a better sense of the mission of the different programs or companies that you're applying to. I would also take time right now to put in a plug for the Office of Career Services, the OCES here at Bridgewater College's campus. You know, Sherry Talbot does a great job. Madeline Martin does a great job of working with students to figure out that particular question, not just like what qualities do I have and where am I applying to, but really how do my qualities align with where I'm applying to. So take time if you need to talk with somebody on campus and I'm not available, go talk to Sherry, go talk to Madeline. They do a great job. All right, so let's move on. Closing information. Really, your closing information should be two big sentences. One is the claim, right? And it's sort of a sneakily formulated claim. Remember, the claim is my success will contribute to your program. And so you've got to kind of instantiate yourself as though you already work there, right? So one phrasing of that I really like is, I look forward to an opportunity to speak with you further about how my success in the position will contribute to the ongoing success of your program. Where you're basically saying, like, that's your claim. You're making this claim. Notice you're not starting with the claim, you're arriving at the claim. In other words, you're not writing rhetorically and saying, my success will contribute to the ongoing success of your program. You're showing them the evidence first. You're showing them the reasons. And then at the very end, you're telling them and explaining to them what those experiences that you've just described, what it all means. And it means, again, that your success in the position is going to contribute to the success of the program or the success of the company that you're applying to. And then the next thing that you got to do in your closing is you got to say when you're available to interview and the best way to contact you, right? Obviously, you've heard about, you know, use your school email address when you're applying to jobs while you're still in school. And if you're applying for jobs after school, use an email address, which is basically as vanilla as it possibly can be. So first name, last name, first initial, last name, some variation of that. You don't want to have any nicknames in there. You want to have something which is basically can align with you closely and easily. Again, because people are you know, they're reading over these things quickly, and you don't want a goofy email address that you set up when you were 15 to be the thing that stands out at them, right? So I'm available immediately for an interview. The best way to contact me is leave them a phone number. If you're going to answer your damn phone, right? That's a problem sometimes if people putting in their cover letters a phone number that they don't pick up. I'm like, I'm not interested in you know, leaving somebody a voicemail message. I hate talking on the phone as it is. And then an email address. I would say email address is the best thing that you can leave at the end of a cover letter. Most hiring managers prefer email addresses, and certainly most admission counselors do as well. All right. So now we'll talk about the purpose. What is your purpose, right? Notice, by the way, that the purpose at this point in time is so much more than just, I want a job, right? It's not just any job. It's this job. It's not, I am writing to apply for a job because I just graduated and I don't know what to do with myself, or I'm writing to apply for a graduate program because, you know, I don't know what I can do with my bachelor's degree, whatever, right? You're applying for that particular program. You're applying for that particular job, right? So it's got to be, you got to have laser-like focus here. My mentor, my dissertation advisor, his name was Steve Carr, told me when I was on the job market and I was applying for jobs, something that stuck with me and I wish to pass on to you, which is this quote: the only thing worse than no job is the wrong job. And I think what he means by that is, you don't want just any old job, because what if you end up working for a company that has ethical practices that you find questionable? Or what if you end up working for a company and the people that you work for suck? Or what if you get admitted into a graduate program and it was the wrong graduate program, and it's not actually going to help you sort of advance in the career in the way that you thought you wanted it to, right? You're going to get stuck there. And at the very least, you're going to be stuck there for a little bit of time as you try to regather yourself and apply for another job. But as you know, as probably some of you are starting to experience right now, applying for jobs, applying for graduate programs is stressful and it's hard and it's a full-time job. And you don't want to be doing that shit a lot, right? That is not good news. So, all right. So again, the purpose is not just any job. It is this job. And you can have that statement for a variety of different jobs, right? So you can be applying to 10, 15, 20 different jobs. But for each one of those cover letters, for each one of those personal statements, your attitude is not, well, I want any of these 20. No, the attitude in that cover letter, in that personal statement must be, I want this one, right? And it's got to be able to be true for all 20 of those instances. Because it's not to say that there's only one job out there for you, but there are definitely wrong jobs out there for you. All right. move on to the next part. So who are you, right? I didn't talk about this at the beginning because I think most people, that's the thing that they feel like they understand the most when they start writing a personal statement. Importantly, you're not a student who's searching for a job. You're not a job seeker. You're not needy here. You're a professional. You're a contributor. You're a committed team member. That's the attitude that you have to have when you're writing a personal statement and a cover letter. You can't think of yourself as somebody who is asking for something. You're offering something. You have skills, you have knowledges, you have experiences. Those skills, those knowledges, those experiences will advance the cause of a professional writing or of a professional graduate program. They'll advance the cause of some business that you're applying to, right? You're not asking for a handout. You're asking for an opportunity to contribute, right? And that's how you need to understand yourself. That's hard because I think the last time that you had a serious job application process was when you were applying to college, most of you. And it's really hard to get out of that buyer's mindset where you're just looking for the best opportunity. No. They're looking for an opportunity to hire you. And I think that's, it's sort of just a subtle tweak on how it is that you understand who you are as an author. That is important to make, because otherwise you're going to come across as sort of pleading and needy when you really, what you want to come across as like they want to scramble after you. They want to ask themselves, why isn't this person already working for us? All right. So I'll stop sharing now. Well, I'll leave this up for now. And if Jay, Sienna, Sam, if you had any questions that I can answer right now, I'm happy to do that. Like I said before, I do have questions that people have submitted ahead of time that I can go to, but I'll give you guys an opportunity to ask, well, give you gals an opportunity to ask questions now if you have them.
I had a question. So when you're trying to incorporate like a program's like mission or like specific like keywords from a job posting or something, how do you incorporate those without being like super obvious? Like I'm just like listing all the things you want me to list.
Right. Well, that's good. So one thing I would say is there's a difference between just sort of regurgitating the language from a job posting in your cover letter and aligning the language in a job posting with experiences that you already have. Right. So if a job or a graduate program or an internship or something like that says that they're looking for somebody who can be a team player or, whatever, by the way, you want to look for specific language in the job postings. If they give you non-specific languages, it might not be a good job or a good opportunity. Right. So if they give you a very specific list of, we want somebody who can do this, that, and the other, and you've done that, right? Well, all that you would need to do in your letter then is talk about how you've done this, that, and the other, right? You don't need to be obnoxious about it. And you can even say, I noticed in your job posting that you said you're looking for somebody who does this. When I had this experience, that's exactly what I did. And then describe that experience. That's fine. It's totally okay to sort of step back from the actual piece of writing itself and be like you're talking to somebody, right? This is your only opportunity to try to have a conversation with the hiring manager. And so if you're able to say, like, in looking at your job posting, all of these different skills and attributes that you talk about, they're things that I have through this experience. That's A-okay. The mission language is trickier, right? The mission language, you don't want to be obnoxious about that, right? What you do is you really have to, it's not just sort of finding the words, you have to spend time. You have to sort of live with the words of the mission statement for a little bit. Now, this is if the company that you're applying to has an articulated mission statement like Bridgewater College does. Many companies do. But you have to sort of try to make sense of what that mission is and how that mission statement applies to the work that that company or that school does, okay? And this is why I said the nesting doll thing, right? A mission statement is always going to be a big, big umbrella idea, right? And if you just sort of pull big language out there without any sort of concrete examples to tie it to, it's just going to seem like platitudes. What's important to think about is, and the question that you ask yourself is, all right, I know that the company's mission is this, but how does that mission get played out in the specific position that I'm applying to, right? So, I think Bridgewater College has got a mission statement that talks about, whole person education, and we have these certain mission institutional values and whatnot. Well, that mission statement, those values are important as a big picture umbrella concept, but it happens very differently, boots on the ground differently in the Master in Digital Media Strategy program than it does in the HR Master's program, than it does in the Athletic Training Master's program. In other words, well, let me just pull up. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I'm going to pull up Bridgewater College's mission statement just to use it as an example, because I want to get the exact language. All right. Maybe. Like, their new website confuses me. Does it confuse you as well? Yeah, anyway. I used to be able to find their mission statement so easily. Now I'll just have to Google Bridgewater College mission statement. There we go. All right, so their mission statement reads, Bridgewater College empowers students to lead principled lives of purpose and consequence marked by professional accomplishment and personal fulfillment, right? So that statement means differently for the Master's in Digital Media Strategy program than it does for the Master's in Science and Athletic Training program, than it does for the HR program, right? It means differently if you are a biology major than if you are a professional writing major, than if you are a business major. That is to say, you lead a different kind of principled life of purpose and consequence as a scientist than you do as a digital media strategist. You have a different set of professional accomplishments as a professional writer than you would as a professional educator, as a teacher, right? So you need to look at the language of the statement first, and then see how that language trickles down to the individual position or the individual program, and then make sense of, like, so what does it mean? And this would be the question, that what does it mean for me if I was applying to the MDMS program? What would it mean to lead a principled life of purpose and consequence? How does the MDMS program help its students do that? Or say this was a job and you are applying to, work as an admissions counselor. Well, what does it mean for an admissions counselor at Bridgewater College to help students lead principled lives of purpose and consequence? How does an admissions counselor do that, right? And so that's I think the way that you avoid basically just like parroting the language back at them is if you engage in that type of analysis to really think about how does that mission apply to the position or the program that I'm applying to. Now, what I would say is this: that's a really labor-intensive thing to do, right? And if you try to do that for every single job that you apply to, or every single well, I'll start with jobs. If you try to do that for every single job that you apply to, you're going to burn out real quick, right? And you're also going to get really disheartened when you do that work and then you don't get a job, right? Because, man, I've just spent all this time figuring out the mission and how the mission aligns with the job, and you actually start to think yourself into the position, as you should, and then you get let down if you don't get hired, right? And you might think to yourself, oh, it's something with me. And really, probably it was just maybe there was somebody else who was better suited for the position, and that's fine. So what I would say is you got to make a priority list, make a priority stack. Like, what are if you're going to apply for 50 jobs, what are the top 5 or top 10 jobs that are going to get most of your attention, right? And you're going to pour yourself into those jobs, and then do groupings with the bottom 40, right? So I'm going to have 20 jobs, which are kind of like this aspect of my background, and then 20 that are kind of like this aspect of my background. And I'll write specific letters for my top 10 jobs and more generic letters for these bottom 40 jobs, right? And that way you're not overextending yourself when you're trying to write for all these different positions. And you're also not building yourself up in each of those positions such that when you start to get, and because keep in mind, you'll always get more rejections than you'll get acceptances. That's just the way things are. Those rejections won't hit as heavy, right? It's a little bit different when you're applying for graduate programs, because hopefully you're applying to less graduate programs. And so you really want to treat any graduate program that you apply to, and you probably, because a lot of them cost, $50 to $100 to apply to, you probably want to focus on maybe 5 or 10, and you want to dedicate to each of those programs in the way that I've just described, right? So again, because you're probably applying to less graduate programs, you want to focus more intently on writing a cover letter for those graduate programs than for jobs, if you're planning on applying for a variety of jobs. Now, sometimes the jobs that you're applying to, there's not going to be 50 of them, or maybe you're limited in geography to a certain region in the country, and you look at that region and there's only 5 jobs and you have to apply for all 5. Well, then you need to sort of seriously dedicate yourself and sort of do that analysis. And it's hard. It's really hard work. It should not go unsaid that applying for jobs, applying to graduate programs is like adding on a whole other second job onto the work that you're already doing as a full-time student. It's hard. I mean, it is. I was writing my dissertation at the same time that I was sending out my job application materials. And I would say I probably spent more hours per week when I was applying to jobs, writing and sending out my job application materials than I was writing my dissertation. And I actually didn't finish my dissertation until after I had been offered the job at Bridgewater, right? So, and that was like, all right, now that I've gotten the job, I can go back to actually finishing the thing that I need to finish in order to get a degree, in order to get the job that I was just offered, right? And that's sort of how backwards the priorities sometimes stack up. So good questions. I don't know if that helped or not, Sam.
Yes, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, good.
I appreciate it. And I do need to leave for work now, but
okay,
thank
cool.
you.
I'll see you later, Sam.
Yeah.
Sienna J, did you have any questions? No?
I think this is a little bit more unrelated, and maybe I'm totally off base asking for this, but I know in my experience, cover letters that I had to write in the past haven't always been for jobs, but they've also been when I'm submitting like writing somewhere.
Yes.
So I was wondering how that might be different.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's kind of a whole other ball game, and it's not exactly, grad school or job material, but I was just thinking of like how the content of the cover letter might look different. Cause I feel like I also struggle to get my point across and like how I would fit into your literary magazine or how this piece, so I don't know if you can touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I would say, first and foremost, the resident experts on this in our department would be Professor Yerkeba and Dr. Galloway. And so if I would go to them and they would be able to give you, but my basic take on that is that much of what you'd be doing in a cover letter for a submission for like a literary magazine is very similar to what you're doing in a cover letter for a job, insofar as you are trying to explain the thing that you are writing about. In this case, it's not yourself, but rather this story or poem or set, whatever it is that you're submitting. And you're also trying to explain to the people that you're writing to how that thing fits in with the mission of the thing that you're hoping to put it into, right? So if you're hoping to publish a story in a lit mag, you need to be able to tell them how this story that you've written fits into and adheres to or partakes in the mission and values of the literary mag that you're submitting it to. In terms of the conventions, I think there's a lot more artistry that goes into writing a cover letter for a piece that you're submitting for publication. And the expectation is that, we're all writers here, so why don't you show me a little bit, so in some ways the cover letter for a story or a poem or something like that has to entice in the same way that the story itself does. And so there's actually an artistry to coming up with an interesting hook, and how quickly can you get the point of the story, the main theme of the story or the main conflict in the story out, whatever it is that's sort of the selling point of the story, such that somebody can latch onto it. I think that it's less an argument that must be made with evidence than it is sort of a like an enticement, right? It's less an advertisement that's like, drink Coke, than it is an advertisement that says, look at how happy these people who drink Coke are. I don't know it's hard to sort of articulate the distinction. It's subtle. I would say writing a cover letter for submitting a piece, I find it a hell of a lot harder than writing a cover letter trying to argue. But then of course I don't write as much. That's why I say, talk to Nikki, talk to Stan, because I think they got the experience doing it. They do it well and they do it often. So that's a good question though.
I do actually, sorry. What is the difference between a cover letter and a personal statement? I always see both, and I thought they were kind of interchangeable. Are they
They
not?
are. I mean, and certainly the way that I've talked about them is talking about them as being interchangeable. Oftentimes, a personal statement will sometimes have a very specific prompt that you are asked to attend to. And so you have to look at the specific graduate program. And what I would say the big difference is personal statements tend to fit with graduate programs, and cover letters tend to be sort of the currency of applying for jobs. So, you know, the way that I talked about them throughout was as interchangeable with each other. And I was just imagining, write a generic personal statement. Oftentimes, when you're applying for a graduate program, there will be a very specific personal statement prompt that you will have to attend to in your personal statement. And the reason that they want you to do that is because they want to foreground some set of values or experiences that they think are particularly important. So for example, when I was applying to PhD programs, a lot of the programs that I talked to asked not just for a personal statement, but a personal statement that describes your research, right? It's other graduate programs will talk about, you know, write a personal statement where you talk about your experiences with teaching diverse students, right? And so what they're asking you to do is not just talk about any old experiences, but they want to put some some guardrails down so that you're only talking about a certain set of experiences. Personal statements do that a lot more than cover letters ever do. Cover letters, it's pretty much generically, tell me how your success is going to contribute to my success. And that's the goal of the cover letter. And really, it's the goal of a personal statement, even if there's a more specific prompt, but you just have to reframe that argument according to whatever prompt they offer to you. So.
And so if it is, so my reason, sorry, I saw your email like today. It was for graduate school. So in the context of getting a prompt, would I still answer that prompt, but within the structure of a business letter? Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Right. So and then typically what the prompts will ask you to do is, unless it's some sort of like a left field prompt, of which there are many, right? But they're still going to ask you to sort of take a stand, like make a claim and justify it with reasons. And so the structure is still roughly the same. And again, unless they say specifically, we would like you to, for the MDMS program, students are able to apply with what we call a multimodal personal statement or multimodal statement in lieu of a written statement, right? Unless they offer you something like that, or they tell you, we want you to write a story, or we want you to do this. And some companies do that, and some graduate programs do that. Then the best advice that I can offer you from this position is have it be a business letter. That's something that will, now here's the thing, you're not gonna win style points for writing a business letter, right? It's gonna be sort of cut and dry, as the name suggests, down to business, but you're also not gonna scare anybody off with the business letter. And so it's kind of like you gotta play to a variety of audiences with the same document. It's always nice, I think, when graduate programs or when jobs get weird, and then they tell you exactly how they want you to get weird with them, because that tells you a lot about the company. If that's off-putting to you, you don't want to work at that company, right? They have a set of values that you probably don't jive with. And if it's not, if you're like, oh, this is fun, then yeah, maybe that would be a great company for you to work for. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, I'm going to jump over, unless you guys have additional questions, have additional questions. I'm going to jump over to the questions that folks sent in ahead of time, because I know that they're going to be watching this after the fact. Feel free to stick around if you have follow-up questions, if you want to listen to how I answer them. If you have places to go, you can go there. It's up to you. So Hannah asked, is a personal statement needed if an employer doesn't ask for it? This is tricky. What I would say is, it's not needed, but it's not necessarily not recommended, right? A personal statement, look at it as an opportunity for you to, again, make a claim about how you're going to fit in. Sometimes people will, like if you're applying for a job and they say, just send a resume. Just send a resume, first of all, but you can also build into the resume a component of a personal statement, which is sort of that objective line that some people put at the tops of their resumes, which you can imagine is kind of a condensed personal statement. So you know, Hannah, if you're applying for a job and they just say, send a resume or send a resume and an application to this particular address, then I would say in your resume, try to add in the objective statement, which again is that statement where you're saying, here's how my success will contribute to your success. Hannah, you also asked, what are the main differences to consider when writing a cover letter or personal statement, whether it's for a job, an internship, or graduate school? I would say the main differences to consider lie mostly in the specific program or company to which you're writing the cover letter or personal statement, right? It's going to be a very personalized document. I mean, think about the nature of a letter. A letter as a genre of writing is a direct address. It's me writing to you, right? It's me writing to a business manager or a hiring manager. And so I'm not going to write a letter to somebody that I could send to somebody else, right? That's just sort of that's like spam, basically. And so you want to make sure that the main differences to consider when you're writing any cover letter or personal statement are the differences that come about because of the person that you are writing that letter to. In terms of the differences between a cover letter and a personal statement for jobs, internships, and graduate schools, I think the main difference is that cover letters tend to be for jobs and internships, and personal statements tend to be for graduate programs. I would say that it is more likely that you're going to find a job asking for a personal statement than it is that you find a graduate school asking for a cover letter, right? So cover letters typically are not currency. They aren't valuable for graduate programs in the same way that personal statements sometimes are valuable for jobs. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it does. And if it doesn't, Hannah, feel free to send me a follow-up. Kenneth asks, when should you realize that you're putting too much in your cover letter? This is a great question. That's why I said 2 or 3 things, right? You don't want your cover letter to basically be a paragraphed version of your resume, right? So you want your cover letter to be to include as much information in it as necessary to make the claim that the cover letter or the personal statement is trying to make, which again is, my success is going to contribute to your success. So my success in your company contributes to the success of your company. And I think you really only need to make that claim with 3 reasons. And really, when I'm talking about 3 reasons, I'm talking about 3 experiences. So an internship, a research project, and some job experience, maybe. The one thing that I would caution against is if you're sort of thin on experience, you don't necessarily, sometimes it's better to leave questions in a cover letter, right? To allude to an experience without going into great detail, because you give the person an opportunity to ask you about it in an interview. But that's sort of that's the advanced webinar. That's the next webinar that I can talk about maybe in the spring semester, is how do you get real sneaky and clever in how you compose a cover letter. But anyway, and then Kenneth, you also asked, what are significant things that should be put within a cover letter? Extracurriculars, specified taken courses, what are things that should be avoided? One thing I would say is I think something that should be avoided are courses, talking about coursework that you had, unless the courses that you're talking about were like a special course that you designed, like an independent study or a research project that you designed. If you're just talking about courses that anybody who was a major at Bridgewater could take, then that's maybe for your resume, but probably not even then. That's for your transcript, really. Extracurriculars, provided that those extracurriculars somehow prove that you are, again, sort of capable of succeeding, capable of contributing, and that you understand the mission. Internships, research projects, jobs that you've had, leadership positions that you've held on campus, clubs, organizations that you've been involved in, those are all valuable because they show you as an employee. They show you as a potential graduate student, as somebody who, again, can succeed, can contribute, and understands the mission. Yeah, those are the things that I would highlight in your reasons. Sam asks, oh, she already asked this one. Trell asks, how could a great cover letter help achieve success? Here's the interesting thing. I love this question, not just because it's sort of a boots on the ground question, but an interesting thing happened to me while I was writing my own personal statements for applying to jobs while I was working on my dissertation. And it won't necessarily happen to you. But when you are put in a position where you have to write about yourself as a professional, you start to think about yourself as a professional. And so in many ways, that first really good personal statement that you write, that first really good cover letter that you write is actually your first performance as a professional. And so one of the ways in which a great cover letter or a great personal statement helps you achieve success is it pushes you to imagine yourself as a professional. And that's hard to do. It's really hard to do when you're still a student, because you're still sort of in a student mindset. Of course you are. You're still a student, right? Many of you. Well, both of you, but many of the people who are going to be watching this later on. And I think that that's, for me, it's why it's such a tricky thing to write, because it's asking you to think of yourself as something that you are not yet. But the cool thing about doing that is that if you're able to do it and you're able to work on it and revise it, you actually start to become the thing that you have to write about, which is weird. I don't know if there's a psychology behind that, Sienna, I'm sure that you can talk to your professors in the psych department about it, but it does, it happens. And to a person, all of my graduate school colleagues had the same experience when they were writing their dissertations and their job application materials at the same time, is that they started to realize, oh, wait a minute, I can do this job. I am a professional. I can be an academic. And then that was sort of their becoming moment, right? And then Trell asks, I think another important question is, what can a poorly executed cover letter portray for a person deemed as successful? I think the worst that a bad cover letter can do is make sure that you don't get a job, right? I've heard of no stories of somebody saying like, how dare you write me such an atrocious cover letter? I will now kill you. I don't think that happens, right? But certainly a bad cover letter is going to prevent you from ever getting a good job. And I think that what's tricky about it is that nobody will ever tell you that it was your cover letter that did it. You just won't get called back. And then it's like, well, what went wrong? So this is one of those things where you need to have as many eyeballs on your cover letter before you send it anywhere as possible. So it's peers, it's friends. Again, I'm going to give another plug for the Office of Career Services, Sherry Talbot and Madeline Martin, myself, the Writing Center. Folks on campus are very much invested, if you're at Bridgewater, very much invested in your success, both as a graduate student, potential graduate student, or as a potential worker somewhere. And so you need to get them to put their eyeballs on your work as much as you possibly can. Many hands make light work, and you want to send out this cover letter feeling like I've done all that I can do. And it's really just up to the people that I'm applying to. I've left nothing on the table. I've made the best, strongest case for myself as possible. And if they say no, it's not because I screwed up. It's because somebody else is better for the position, and I'm A-okay with that. And that's the perspective that you want to have when you should not be sort of waiting nervously in the wings if you've done your work, if you've done your due diligence. So cool. Any other questions, Jay or Sienna? All right. Well, cool. Thanks very much. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. Thanks for everybody else. If you do have questions, this goes for Jay and Sienna or anybody else who watches this after the fact, please feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to answer them. Thanks again for joining me. Have a great day.